The iPhone 14 Pro has been out for almost an entire year. After nearly a full year of day in and day out use, there's a lot I have to say about this device. And in this video, I want to share with you my experience. So I've had the iPhone 14 pretty much since it came out, so I thought I'd do kind of like a long-term video on it, share some of my thoughts on it, my experience with it, some of the settings that I use, some of the apps that I use, and kind of just the general overall experience that I've had with the iPhone. Starting off first with the design of the phone, obviously I might be a little bit biased here, but I think it looks absolutely amazing. With the all glass and metal build, with the matte glass on the back of the phone, the stainless steel band around the side, I think it just feels and looks absolutely amazing. Something about the build quality of the Pro models of the iPhone just make them feel so premium, which they should, honestly, with the price tag that they have, but I think it just looks absolutely amazing. So this year I decided to go with the space black color, which is the best color that the iPhone 14 Pro comes in, obviously. I don't even want to argue about that. That's just the correct answer. But realistically, I went with this color because Apple hasn't made like a black color since I think like the iPhone 7 or something like that, and this is the closest they've come to like a full black phone, so I just really liked how it looked, and that's what I went with. I did also go with the Pro Max model of the phone, which is obviously the bigger model. Now going back, if I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't go with the Pro Max. I've decided that I kind of changed my opinion on it. It's almost too big. I think the Pro model is what I would have gone with if I could go back. So the newest feature that kind of sets the iPhone 14 Pro models aside from like the 13 Pro is the dynamic island. When this phone first came out, there was a lot of hype around the dynamic island, whether it was good or bad. A lot of people had a lot to say about the dynamic island. But now living with it for pretty much about a year now, it does have its functionalities. My favorite features or use case of the dynamic island has been for just when I'm watching a YouTube video or listening to music on Spotify. I can easily tap on the dynamic island and it'll take me right back to the YouTube video that I'm watching or whatever song I'm listening to, and I can from there change the song, obviously. But it's just really nice to have when I'm in like a random app and I've opened 6 apps since I started my YouTube video and I want to jump right back to the video. I can just tap on the island. I don't think the dynamic island is that much of a game-changing feature that you need to upgrade your phone just for that. It's still a bit of a gimmick. I mean, there's some functionality to it, but you absolutely don't need it. And I'm 100% sure I could live without it. It's just a nice to have feature, but it's definitely not a need. When I first got the phone, I did notice the dynamic island more than I noticed the previous notch of the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 12. But honestly, after living with it for a year, it just kind of disappears, just like the notch did. You don't really notice it much. And even when I'm watching videos and the cutouts there, you kind of just learn to ignore it. It does not really make that much of a difference, to be honest. All right, so next I kind of want to talk about what accessories I use with the phone. And the first one of that being the case that I use, or cases. So I pretty much have 2 cases that are kind of on rotation with this phone. The first one is the Apple leather case in the umber color. Obviously you can see that this case is well loved. It's aged really well. There's a lot of wear and tear on it, and I think that's kind of to be expected with a leather case, especially in this color, the lighter color. You just see the aging and the patina of it a lot more. So the other case that I really like a lot is the Spigen Optic Armor case. This case has a shield that goes over the lenses of your cameras. So this is really nice because if I ever drop the phone and I have this on, I really don't need to worry about the cameras at all. Whether that's getting scratched or cracked or anything. By the way, if you guys are interested in any of the stuff that I mentioned here, it's all going to be linked down below, so feel free to check that out as well. In terms of charging, I pretty much just use the Apple wireless charger and I keep that on my nightstand. It's not the fastest wireless charger in the world, but for someone that's charging just overnight like I am, I think it works just fine. The other thing I have for that charging my phone on the go is actually the Anker 633 MagSafe battery pack. That pack actually charges this phone from dead to full and still has juice left over to charge my AirPods or whatever else I need to charge too. So I absolutely love that thing. I don't use it all the time. I just keep it for if I'm ever in a pinch and I need to charge my phone up right away. And the last accessory that I have with this phone is the Apple leather card holder. And I cannot recommend that. It only holds 3 cards. It's not the best, but I've had it since the iPhone 12 and it works just fine for me. Since pretty much everything's on Apple Pay nowadays, I never really need anything more than just those 2 credit cards. So for me, it works just fine. Okay, so jumping into my home screen setup on this phone, it took me a while, but I've pretty much got it down to just 1 page. And the way I was able to do that is in a combination with folders, smart widgets, and this app called Clear Spaces. So what Clear Spaces does, it pretty much lets me have these clear empty spaces that you'll see on these 2 corners of my screen. What that does, it just kind of helps everything look more clean and minimal, but it also still gives me the functionality with those smart widgets to have whatever widgets I want as well. I used to have like multiple pages on my phone, but I just found that when I had multiple pages, I was just dumping random apps onto those pages, and it just felt really cluttered to me. So just having it down to 1 page lets me be more intentional about what apps I actually want on my home screen. So besides the basic finance and social media apps that I use, pretty much everything else is just the default Apple apps that come with the iPhone that I use, aside from a few of them. So the first app that's different from the basic Apple apps is Notion. I use Notion only for my YouTube scripts. So I only have YouTube scripts and YouTube ideas on Notion. Everything else, any other note that I need to make, just goes in Apple Notes. So there tends to be this trend or something about trying to find the best notes app or the best to-do list or the best grocery list app or something. But I found that when I've tried all those new apps and different apps, I was spending more time actually learning the app than I was using it. So the standard Apple Notes app is more than powerful enough for 90% of people. You can scan documents on it, you can write stuff up. It's got pretty much everything you could ever need. So that's what I use for just about everything other than YouTube scripts. I just like to keep those separate. The other 2 apps that are different from the standard apps is one, I use Gmail. I've just used Gmail forever, so I just have that app. That's what I'm used to. That's what I use. And the other one is Carrot Weather. I've been using Carrot Weather for a long time too, and I really like the layout and how it looks. Recently, I went back to the Apple Weather app, just the standard one, and it's gotten a lot better than what I remember. So that's good to know in case I ever want to switch back to that it has a lot more functionality than what I remember. So the main reason that I got this phone was for the cameras on it. Apple's used the 12 megapixel sensor on their iPhones for a long time, and this is the first iPhone model that got upgraded to the 48 megapixel sensor. I like to take a lot of pictures and I like to take a lot of videos, so having the nicer cameras was well worth it for me. Before I talk about my settings and what camera app I use and stuff, I just want to show you a few pictures that I've taken with this camera just to kind of give you an idea of what it's capable of. Okay, so to me personally, it's kind of mind-boggling that you can get pictures like that just from an iPhone, but I'm going to kind of jump into my settings and show you how I set everything up to get pictures like that. So I use the default camera app once again. I don't think you need anything more than just the default app. It has a lot of functionality to it. So there's a few settings that I think are absolutely crucial to get the best picture quality out of your iPhone 14. First one would be shooting pretty much everything exclusively in RAW. Now with the Apple ProRAW or RAW setting on the pictures, that's the only way you're actually going to be able to get the full 48 megapixel sensor. Otherwise, if you're not shooting RAW, you're just going to get bumped back down to 12 megapixels. So not only that, but there's upsides and downsides to shooting RAW. So the upsides are, one, you get the full 48 megapixels. The images look a little bit less processed, which personally I like. It looks more natural. There's less of that computational photography look, and it just looks a lot more natural. And then 2, since you're getting that full sensor and the full 48 megapixel, that sensor is big enough to give you some natural depth of field without using the portrait mode. For me, the portrait mode just kind of makes everything look a little bit fake and that fake bokeh. I'm not a huge fan of that. So just getting the natural depth of field with the 48 megapixel is just absolutely amazing. There's also a couple downsides to shooting ProRAW. The first one being is that the file sizes are a lot bigger than just standard pictures. There's obviously a lot more data in the ProRAW files, so that's why the file sizes are a lot bigger, but it'll fill up your storage a lot faster. And then number 2 is that there's a little bit of a shutter lag. So it takes about a second or two from when you push the button to actually take the picture. So just keep that in mind if you're shooting Pro RAW. But the biggest upside of them all for shooting Pro RAW is that, like I said, there's a lot more data packed into that picture when you take it. So when I go to edit the pictures afterwards using Lightroom, I can change pretty much anything I want to change, whether that's exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, color grading. It just makes it a lot easier to work with the picture. So overall, I've really enjoyed the iPhone 14 Pro. There might be a few downsides. Some people say that the battery is not the best. For me, I've never had an issue with the battery. I've had this for almost a year. My battery health is still at 100%. It still lasts about a day and a half to 2 days for me, and I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, so not an issue for me. Obviously, it's July, so the iPhone 15 is pretty much right around the corner. We're thinking like September or so. The iPhone 15 and the 15 Pro models, or Ultra, whatever they're going to call them, are going to be announced. So with that said, am I going to be upgrading to the iPhone 15s? Probably not. I'm really happy with this phone. I don't see any reason for me to upgrade to the iPhone 15s. But again, we're just gonna have to wait and see what they actually bring. The rumor mill for the iPhone 15 has been going absolutely wild lately. Some days we hear that we're gonna get solid state buttons, and then the other days we're not gonna get solid state buttons. So everybody's just kind of still taking guesses, and there's nothing set in stone until Apple really announces what they're gonna be doing with it. So if you're thinking about getting the iPhone 14 or debating getting the 14 versus the 15 and just waiting, I would say just wait it out, wait a couple more months, and just see what Apple's going to do with the iPhone 15. Once you absolutely know for sure what the iPhone 15 is going to be, then you can decide if you want the latest and greatest iPhone 15 or if you're fine with the 14 Pro and missing whatever new features they're going to add. Plus, at that point, the iPhone 14 Pro will also be a little bit cheaper since the 15 has been announced. Personally, I think around this time of the year, I pretty much always tell people just wait it out. Wait to see what Apple does, and then you can kind of decide what you want to do. All right, so that pretty much does it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. Since I'm a newer channel and just kind of getting into the flow of posting videos and stuff, it really helps me out a lot. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.